Hi, this video is to help you with factoring trinomials that are in the format ax squared plus bx plus c, which is the basic format for a quadratic equation. Now, before we get into actually factoring these, there's a concept that you need to understand to learn this method that I'm going to show you for factoring. So the concept is this. You have to know the difference between a product and a sum. So let's say I have a number where the two numbers I've multiplied together give me 25. That's a product. That's when we have two numbers that we multiply together will give me a product. But two numbers that I add together will give me a sum. Now what I want to do with these two numbers, 25 and 10, is come up with the same two numbers that when I multiply them will give me the 25, but when I add them will give me the 10. Now this one's pretty easy to start with because there's only two ways that we can multiply and get 25. 25 times 1 and 5 times 5. Well, which one of those two pairs of numbers are going to add up to 10? Well, it's certainly not 25 and 1 because that adds up to 26. But 5 plus 5 is 10. So 5 times 5 gives me 25. 5 plus 5 gives me 10. Now your ability to do this, to come up with the two numbers, is going to be very helpful in being able to factor. So let's practice it a few times. I have these two numbers. The product is 12. The sum is 7. I need to find two numbers that when I multiply them together, they'll give me 12. When I add them together, they'll give me 7. So there's only a few ways to get 12. 12 times 1, 6 times 2, 4 times 3. Which set of numbers is going to add up to 7? Right here. So this is 4 times 3 gives me 12. 4 plus 3 gives me 7. Okay, let's try another. I have a product of negative 24 and a sum of positive 2. Now this one's a little more tricky because the thing is, if you're going to get a product, two numbers that multiply to give me negative 24, one of the numbers has to be negative and the other number has to be positive. So that's an important difference in the last problem. So we're going to multiply and this number has to be a positive. Now, if it's going to add up to 2, then I need to have more positives than I do negatives, right? If it's going to add up to positive 2. So when we do this, I'm going to make the positives the greater number. So 24 minus 1. Negative 1 times 24 is negative 24. Does that add up to 2? No, that adds up to 23. How about 12 and negative 2? That multiplies to negative 24, but that adds up to 10. Okay, how about 8 and negative 3? Nope, that adds up to 5. Oh, here we go. How about 6 and negative 4? There's the two numbers we're looking for. They multiply to give me negative 24, but they add up to 2. So remember, I want the positives to be the greater number. So I'm going to put the 6 over there with the positives and the 4 with the negatives. And when we add them, it doesn't make any difference. Negative 4 plus 6 equals 2. Okay, let's try one more. Why don't you see if you can come up with this? So what do you think? Okay, so again, since the product is going to be negative, we know that one of the numbers is negative, the other number is positive. In this case, though, the negatives have to be greater than the positives because we need the sum to be negative. So that means I'm going to do negative 9 times positive 2 and negative 9 plus 2 equals 7. Do you see that if I had had 9 positive minus 2, I would end up with positive 7, but what I wanted was to end up with negative 7. So always make sure you have the signs right. Okay, now we're going to use this concept to do some factoring, and you'll see how it works. So here's our first trinomial. This is a quadratic equation. And remember, our quadratics are in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. And our first step in factoring this is to figure out the values of a, b, and c. Well, when there's no number, no coefficient in front of the x squared, what number is that? That's always a 1. It's there, but we don't see it. I kind of like to ask, how many x squareds do you see right there? I see 1. 1x squared. Okay, b is 6, and c is 5. Now here's how we're going to use our product sum thing. I call this doing an x factor. Up at the top, I'm going to write a times b. Oh, excuse me, I tell a lie. A times c. And on the bottom, I'm going to put b. So a times c is 1 times 5 is positive 5. And c is, b is positive 6. Now I'm looking for two numbers. I'm going to put lines there. Two numbers that when I multiply them will give me 5, but when I add them will give me 6. Well, guess what? 5 is a prime number. There's only one way to get a 5, and that's with a 5 and a 1. If I added 5 plus 1, would I get 6? Yes. Now we're almost there. We're almost factored. The next step would be to take the value of a, and in this case, a is 1, and we're going to divide each one of these numbers by a. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make our factors, and here's how we're going to do it. The bottom number on our fraction is always going to get an x, and then the top number we're going to add or subtract depending on the sign. The bottom number gets the x, and then we add or subtract the top number. So here's our factors. X plus 5 times x plus 1. Now, if you're not sure you did that right, let's see if when we FOIL this, if we get the right answer. X times x is x squared, x times 1 is x, 5 times x is 5x, 5 times 1 is 5. We have these two numbers in the middle that are like terms. That's 6x, so x squared plus 6x plus 5, and it checks. That's what we started with. So when we're factoring a trinomial, we're trying to find the two binomials, the two terms that when we multiply them together will give us that. And this is the process I would like you to use. Let's review it again. On your x factor, you're going to put a times c on the top. You're going to put the value of b on the bottom. You're going to find the two numbers that when you multiply them give you the number on the top. When you add them, give you the number on the bottom, the b. Then you're going to take the value of a and you're going to divide both of these by whatever a is. So number divided by a, and then you use that to make your factors. The a always gets the x, and the top number is always plus or minus whatever it is. So let's try another. X squared plus 7x plus 12. So first of all, let's figure out a, b, and c. A is 1, b is 7, c is 12. Now, for our x factor, we want to do a times c. So 1 times 12 is 12. Down here, we're going to put the value of b, which is 7. Now I need two numbers that when I multiply them together give me 12, and when I add them together give me 7. There's only three ways to get 12. 12 times 1, 6 times 2, 3 times 4. Here's the pair that we need. Then I'm going to take the value of a, and I'm going to make it into a fraction. The bottom gets the x, and so our factors are going to be 1x, and we just write it like that, plus 3x plus 4, and we're done. Okay. Okay, now I want you to notice that when a is 1, when x squared is by itself, these factors always end up being the same as what you have right there. Now that's not always going to be the case when we factor trinomials, but when a is 1, that's what's always going to happen. Let's try one more. Okay, x squared minus 2x minus 35. So in this case, a is 1, b is negative 2, c is negative 35. And then, just for grins, let's put what a times c is down here. 1 times negative 35 is negative 35. Now let's do our x factor. A times c goes up here. B goes down here, negative 2. Trying to come up with two numbers that when I multiply them together give me negative 35, but when I add them together I get negative 2. So do you know what they are? Not too many ways to get 35. So let's see. 7 times 5 is 35. Which one of those two numbers needs to be negative and which one needs to be positive? Well, the larger number needs to be negative because our b is negative, and so I need more negatives than positives. And then we're going to put the value of a right there, which is what gets the x. And so I have x minus 7 times x plus 5. Good? Now, the next few are going to be a little bit more tricky. Okay, so let's see how they go. Well, actually, this one's not bad. You could do this yourself. Why don't you try it? Pause the video, give it a shot, and see how you do. Okay, I got us started here, A, B, and C, and let's see here. We're going to have one of these be negative and the other positive, but I know my numbers are going to be 5 and 3. And since 2 is positive, I need more positives than negatives. And there we go. We're going to divide by 1, and that gets the x. So 1x plus 5 times 1x minus 3, and there we are factored. Okay, now one thing I haven't mentioned to you is that if you ever want to check to make sure your factors are correct, you can use your TI-84 calculators by putting the original problem into x1, x squared plus 2x minus 15, and then putting into y2 your two factors, x plus 5 times x minus 3, and then hit second graph, and when you look at your table's going to have 3 columns. This will be the x's, and this will be y1, and this will be y2. These should be exactly the same. Each row should have exactly the same numbers in them, otherwise your factors are not right. Okay, this is a good way to check. Okay, so now they're going to get a little more tricky. Okay, so let's try this one. Let's figure out A, B, and C. So A, in this case, is 3, B is negative 7, C is negative 6, and let's do A times C. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. Okay, so I'm going to make my x factor, and I need to get negative 18 up here, and b is negative 7. Okay, so I feel like we're going to be using, I always like to put my lines here, we're going to have a 9 and a 2. Which one of those two needs to be negative and which one needs to be positive? Well, 7 is negative, so the larger number needs to be negative. Now, this time, A is 3, so I'm going to divide by 3. I'm going to divide by 3. Now, I'm going to look over this fraction. This is different from the other ones because in all of these other ones, we had a 1 at the bottom of the fraction. Nothing that can be reduced. But on this one, I can reduce this fraction if I divide by 3 over 3, and I get negative 3 over 1. Okay? The 2 over 3, I can't reduce that at all. It's going to stay the same. But again, we get our factors by putting x with what's on the bottom and then using the top. Okay? So the factors on this one are going to be x minus 3 and then 3x plus 2. The bottom with the top. Now, if you want to double check your work, I showed you a way you could do that using your calculator, but we can also FOIL it and try it. 3x times x is 3x squared plus 2x. Inside minus 9x. Outer is minus 6. This 2 plus 2 minus 9 is minus 7x. And there we are factored. And this checks. So that is what we started with. Let's try another. 11x squared minus 9x minus 2. A, B, C. A is 11. B is negative 9. C is negative 2. Now I'll tell you, students, the more you do this, you'll be able to start making your x without having to write all this down. But it's a good practice to do right now until you get used to what you're doing. So 11 times negative 2 is negative 22. So we're going to put that up here, negative 22, and then negative 9. Well, 22, not too many ways to get that. We're going to do 11 times 2. Which one needs to be positive and which one needs to be negative? This one needs to be negative because there's my B is negative, so I need more negatives than positives. Now, again, I'm going to take the value of A and divide it. Can I reduce 2 over 11? No. But I can reduce negative 11 over 11. That's negative 1 over 1. And once you've reduced your fraction, we're going to put an x, and then we're going to use bottom to top. So we have 11x plus 2, and this one is x minus 1. If you want to double check it, FOIL. 11x squared plus 2x minus 11x minus 2, and our two terms in the middle give us minus 9x, and so it all checks. Boom. We've factored it. Try one more. Why don't you give this one a shot? You can pause the video and try it yourself and then start back up. Okay, so A, B, and C. 2, 11, 14. A times C equals 28. A times C goes up here. B goes here. Two numbers that when I multiply them give me 28, but add up to 11, that's 7 and 4. And now I'm going to take the value of A, and I'm going to put that in the bottom of my fractions. So 7 over 2 we're just going to leave alone, but 4 over 2 I can divide by 2 over 2 and get 2 over 1 by reducing that fraction. Put an x with what's on the bottom, and so I get 2x plus 7 times x plus 2. And we're done. Good job, students. That was the last example I had for you. I hope you have some success in factoring trinomials, and there will be more to come with quadratic equations. Just keep watching the website, and I'll be helping you get through algebra.